I want to give you a riddle, and let me know if you have the answer. I am free for the taking through all of your life. Though given at birth, I weigh next to nothing. Yet no one can hold me for long. What do you think the answer is? It is your breath, breathing, the thing that we were given at birth, yet we were never trained in. We were never talked to about, unless maybe you are an extreme superstar athlete or you're someone who constantly trains and did this research on your own. Breathing is an anomaly because we were born knowing how to do it. Yet there's so many more deeper depths that we can explore in order to use breathing so that we can even be more confident, so that we can be more focused in our personal life, our business, or our career. And what if breathing even helped you heavily reduce stress, anxiety, and even helped you to sleep better through the night? And what if all you had to do was change or tweak or incorporate a new breathing strategy into your routine on a daily basis in order to achieve each of these results? Well, that's what we're talking about today with our breath work expert. That sounds really cool. Breath work expert, Tracey Howes. And before I introduce you to Tracey, because we're going to be going deep, when you take away any piece of knowledge or insight or value from this show, all that we ask is that you share it with one other person who could also use these insights. We're not going to show you advertisements. We're not bringing on any sponsors because we just want to bring you the practical, useful knowledge that you can apply in your life today in order to breathe differently to accomplish higher confidence and more focus. So without further ado, let's talk to our breath work expert, among many other interesting things, which I'll explain to you here in a second, Tracey Howes. And for those who don't know Tracey, she is an advanced oxygen advantage instructor and a raid freediver based on the south coast of England. By incorporating scientifically proven breathwork techniques into daily practice and training programs, Tracey's clients have transformed their breathing habits to build confidence, improve focus, concentration, sleep quality, reduce anxiety and stress, and even train for marathons and prepare to swim the English Channel. Tracey, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Brandon. I'm delighted to be with you today.
So I am unfamiliar with the English Channel. So is this like something that athletes over on that side of the sea train for and want to accomplish? Like, how would you describe the English Channel to someone who's not versed in it?
Well, it's the body of water between England and France. So it is considered probably one of the most epic swims you could do as a long distance athlete. And people train for years, often not achieving the goal of swimming from one coast to the other. So it takes over 20 hours to get across, and it really is quite remarkable in terms of the mental fortitude in addition to the physical strength which is required to do it.
20 hours of being in the water swimming.
Mm.
And breathing is one of the giant factors in making it successfully across the channel.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
I mean, people have done it in various times, but the most important thing is finishing. And you are swimming against the current a lot of the time, open water. And it's also a shipping lane, so I've got my clients swimming and there's a ferry, on the horizon. So, intimidating is an understatement, but
yeah, that seems like a crazy endeavor to be swimming across a channel for 20 hours and boats are coming your way. You've got all these other things to think about. Like that's pretty incredible. And you've trained people to actually accomplish this.
I've worked as part of a team. So nice. As you would imagine, they will have a swim coach, a nutritionist, a PT, and I've been the breathwork coach.
Interesting. So before today, we've never had a breathwork coach or expert come on the show. And we don't often hear about breathwork. I knew one individual, her name was Tara Clancy, and she talks about breathing and she talks about sleep as well, but we've never had her on the show either. And you talk about this phrase called functional breathing. Now, what's the difference between the breathing that we're doing on a normal daily basis and actual functional breathing?
That's a great question, Brandon. And actually, you've answered it. Functional breathing is what our default breathing should be on a day-to-day basis. But for many of us, we don't breathe correctly. We tend to be upper chest breathers. We breathe from the mouth predominantly. And functional breathing is all about retraining the respiratory muscles to perform efficiently, but refocusing on nasal breathing and using the diaphragm so that instead of breathing vertically from the shoulders, we breathe laterally from the base of the lungs.
You say retraining the muscles. So there's a point in our life where we're automatically doing this, but then it comes to a point where we're not, where we are breathing incorrectly.
For many of us, your babies are a perfect example. You know, when we're born, we naturally belly breathe. If you watch them, they don't breathe through their mouth. They will breathe through the nose and the tummy will move. But over time, we become lazy and we pick up bad habits. And for many of us, we either breathe, there are some people who predominantly breathe through the mouth because there's some kind of dysfunction in the nose or sinus cavity. But for others, it is just a lazy default moving from nose to mouth because the mouth is a bigger surface area. So naturally you think, I'm taking in more air. It's easier. But that's where the problems start.
So we begin to breathe through our mouth because it's an easier thing to do, even though it's not the more efficient and higher quality thing to do for our overall health and well-being.
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting. It seems interesting that as evolutionary creatures that we would adopt a habit of mouth breathing, even though it doesn't serve us in a great way. Like, as an example, how would you recommend somebody make the switch back to functional breathing? And like, what are the actual differences that people are going to experience by breathing the way we were naturally born to breathe?
Well, many clients will come to me because something has gone wrong within their health, and they'll either be referred to me from a clinical perspective, or they will come to me of their own fruition, and I can absolutely use myself as an example. I always thought I naturally breathed through my nose. I've never snored or had any sleep disorders, but dysfunctional breathing is a good way of explaining how the body manifests poor breathing habits as a starting point. So if you experience a lot of upper body tension, lumbar spine discomfort, you have mobility issues, chronic pelvic floor pain for women, for example, or let's say you're really into your exercise, but you tend to train breathing through your mouth all the time, and that will then stimulate exercise-induced asthma because you're taking in all of this unfiltered air, which causes inflammation in the top part of the chest.
Whoa.
And I think for many people, you just don't realize what that actually is. And then when something feels uncomfortable, we think, oh, maybe I've been sitting too long, or my circulation is off, or maybe I've been staring at my laptop too long. But we never think that our breathing actually is the root cause. And this is where the shift happens for many people. Once they get a deeper understanding of what's going on in their body and how the mind and the breath and sleep are connected, then the dots are starting to join. And that really is, how I came to find out what the benefits were through my personal experience.
What was your personal experience going through this?
So about 5 years ago, and I would consider myself reasonably healthy, having no serious health issues. Literally out of the blue, one evening, I had a severe panic attack. And it happened just before I went to sleep. But I didn't know what it was. And my throat closed, my heart rate went through the roof, and I thought I was having a heart attack. And I went to A&E, or accident and emergency, and they did all the tests, and they said, there's nothing wrong with your heart or your lungs. It's probably a panic attack. You're going to be fine. Unfortunately, this started to happen on a repetitive basis for about 18 months. And it just affected my sleep terribly. My levels of anxiety were really high. And I just did not feel like myself. And when you're told that there's no clinical solution, it's very frustrating. So I was recommended through a family member to consider meditation, which is something I've never done before. And I don't know if you've ever tried meditation, but I found it really challenging because the mind takes over, and our minds are so powerful, as you know. But the way it worked for me, and I don't do anything by halves, I have to say. I signed up for a 10-day silent meditation retreat because I thought if you're going to learn, you may as well just go for it.
Wow.
And as I say, very challenging. But what was interesting with this meditation technique is they focused on nasal breathing with the mouth closed. And it had a profound effect. And within a few days, I had actually started having the best sleep I'd had in years. And I didn't understand how this was happening. I just knew that I felt better. And I came out of that process with a deeper understanding of the mind, the body, but I wanted more. So I started researching meditation and breathing techniques to really get to the root of why this worked. And that was really what started me on my journey to where I am now.
Now, when you were at this retreat and you noticed a giant shift in just a matter of a few days, was it a combination of the meditation and the breathing? Was it just the breathing? Like, have you gone a stint of time without meditating, yet still have gotten the same positive result? Like, I'm just trying to understand. I wonder what the correlation between the meditation and the breathing itself is, and what really got you the benefits there, if that makes sense.
Well, it's a combination, because in a retreat space, you are surrounded, you're in the right environment where you are with people supporting you through that process. So you have guides to help you and talk you through it. But the key was, with our eyes closed in a seated position, was to focus on the inhale and exhale and the sensation of the air moving in and out of your nose. And now that sounds really simple, but I can tell you, if you have a racing mind and you've got your nervous system is on high alert, it's an extremely difficult thing to do. And I would say probably 7 days in, I was thinking, what's the end result? I'm not feeling anything. Typical. Why am I not getting, anything happening? And my instructor just said, give yourself another day. Just take it day by day. And I remember sort of day 8, it was like a breakthrough. And I suddenly started to experience sensation in the body that I didn't experience before. And this is what I say to people. You don't have to be you don't have to know how to meditate to do breath work. But breath work is an integral part of the meditation process.
Mm.
And when I work with individuals who are typically high performers, typical racing mind, very hard to bring themselves into a calm state very quickly, we use the breath as the tangible hook to focus the mind. And what focuses the mind even more is holding your breath. So that's what I do with my clients.
Now, what does that look like? How long will you have them hold their breath for?
It will be a few seconds for many people. I have had clients who've had COVID and they can't hold their breath for more than 3 to 5 seconds because the lungs have been so impacted. But for a generally healthy individual, they might start at 10 seconds and then we'll slowly work our way up. And it's incredible, because what happens with breath hold is, in a scientific, to explain it in a scientific way, we have a molecule that is only produced in the sinus cavity. And when you hold your breath or you hum, you produce more of this molecule. And it's called nitric oxide. And what this molecule does, it acts as a vasodilator. So it relaxes the blood vessels and allows more oxygen-rich blood to get into your lungs.
Wow.
That does not happen in the mouth. So that is the key reason we support nasal breathing, and that's what we should be, the way we should be breathing 24/7. The only
Wow.
it is a bit of a wow, isn't it?
Yes. I've never heard of any of this. That's why this is so fascinating to me, because
Yeah.
I remember that individual I mentioned before, Tara Clancy, her name is. We were together in the National Speaker Association, and the one thing I took from her, and I've never really been able to pinpoint the benefit I got, I just know it makes me feel better, is she always talked about breathe through your nose and out your nose. Always breathe through your nose, not your mouth. And she never gave any of the science or any of that. Obviously, I'm sure she would in like her workshops and stuff like that, but she mentioned just nose breathing and the benefits of it. So I was like, I'm going to start doing that. And all I think about now, whenever I breathe throughout the day, when I am thinking of breathing, I'm not going through my entire day just thinking about breathing. But when I breathe through my nose, it just feels better to breathe through your nose than to breathe into your mouth. And
Mm.
when you say that you produce this effect when you hold your breath or when you're humming. So when you're humming, you're also producing the same effect. That, what's it called?
Nitric oxide.
Nitric oxide.
And it works alongside carbon dioxide. They both act as vasodilators, and this is what fascinates me about breathing and breath work, is the biology of it, because if you think about it, meditation's been around for thousands of years. The yogis knew that it had benefit, but they didn't have the science at that time. Now we know why, and I cannot tell you how convinced I was by the end of that 10-day retreat, which doesn't work for everybody, to be fair. Some people did leave after 2 or 3 days because it was a lot.
Mm.
But what I found, when you are in that state, you have clarity of mind. Your stress response is controlled. You're less reactive. And that's essentially what I teach people when they come to me. I don't teach meditation per se. I teach science-based breathing techniques where we do breath hold, we do nasal breathing, and you get to improve your self-awareness of your own body and mind, because that's the starting point for everybody. If you don't know how it feels in your body, how are you going to make any change? Because you wouldn't recognize it. And that's how it worked for me. And now you can hear I'm effusive about it because it absolutely works, but people have got to want to commit to this.
You've made this your life's work after moving into this field. So it must have created a profound impact in your life after that meditation. Like, what made you then say to yourself, so let me ask you this first. Let's backtrack a little bit because I get ahead of myself. When you went to this meditation retreat, what were you doing professionally at that time? Like, what were you doing for a career?
So at that time, I was living in London. I had 2 businesses. One with a business partner, one was my own. And I worked with restaurants and hotels doing marketing and social media consultancy. So my life's work at that point had been hospitality marketing. And I think there were various triggers that built up to those panic attacks. But for me, it was an indicator that something had to change.
Mm.
And I made the decision after I left the retreat, when I said I had clarity of mind, I realized one of the changes was I needed to change location. I wanted to be closer to my family. I wanted to be closer to the ocean. I grew up in South Africa near the ocean, and for years I lived in an urban space.
Wow.
And that was a real shift for me, and actually opened the door to really start exploring, what else is out there and what really helps me. Therefore, I need to help other people. I can't not do that. It's just,
Yeah. Is that how you gravitated at that point after going to this retreat and making that big move? First of all, I have to commend you for going to the retreat and making the move when I'm sure that it was uncomfortable. I'm sure that in itself caused anxiety of the unknown, not sure what's to come, leaving a business that I'm sure that you were pretty good in the hospitality industry, but you left that to pursue the next chapter. And those are several big moves there that most people wouldn't even make one of those moves. So, I mean, I think the people listening would, but we all understand that that takes a lot of strength and that takes courage. And I commend you for making that transition, because now you're here talking to us, helping us to breathe better. Now you're making an even more profound difference in the lives of other people.
Thank you, Brandon. That actually means a lot. It was a very, very challenging time, but I feel like, you come out the other side and you are stronger. And for me, it was very much about, okay, I've managed this far on my journey. What else can I do? And who else can I help? That's always been my approach, really, in any business I've been in, because I loved what I did before as well. It wasn't like I didn't want to do it anymore, but I knew inherently something had to change. And geography is a good starting point.
I've heard, yes, I've lived in the same place my whole life. And I can only imagine what changing that scenery would do for someone, because when you change the environment, I mean, we are our environments, right? Where the people were around, where the places were around, and we adopt that same vibe. So that shift alone can be an amazing catalyst for those people who want to make a change. But maybe for those listening, one really strong change would be to change and to adjust the way that you're breathing. And that's why we're having this conversation, because that can help you to feel better. And when you feel better, you're making better decisions. And when you're making better decisions, you're heading down an even more productive and a better path in your life. Now, when you went to this retreat, and I can only imagine at the end of it, you're like, wow, like you even mentioned, like on day 7, you're like, I'm not even sure what this is doing. But then you had that breakthrough on the next day, which was right towards the end of the retreat. Maybe that's why they do it for 10 days and not 7 days, because people would be like, what am I even getting from this, right? After that, how did you know, and how did you decide, I want to coach other people to make this same improvement in their life when it comes to breathing that I've been able to make in my own life?
It was a really organic process. When I relocated, I still kept part of my business going. I didn't just completely stop. And I rebranded my business because I wanted to train other people in some of the social media techniques that I'd used to build my previous business. And I thought, and this was really where it all started as well, in terms of people going, actually, we'd like to work with you. I created a new website for my business, and I used photographs of freediving, my sport. And on my About Me page, I mentioned that I was doing freediving, breath work, and it was just this thing, that I did on the side that I included, but the imagery was very powerful. And during the pandemic, people came to me, because I launched the business during the pandemic, or the rebrand during the pandemic, and said, oh, but we know you did marketing and social, but tell us about the diving and the breath work. And I started getting people asking me to do breath work techniques with them. And I thought, really? Are they interested? And it sounds odd to say, because, COVID being a respiratory disease and the impact it had, of course, it shone a light on respiratory health. But at that point, I thought, wow, there is obviously a lot of interest based on the situation we're in. And I'm sure I can add some value. So let me see what else I can do. And I was working with a mentor at the time, and he said to me, listen to your audience. What are they asking you for?
Yeah.
So I continued with business number 1, but then I immediately got online and looked up a book that I'd read for my freediving, which was called The Oxygen Advantage, which was all about breathwork for sports performance. And there's different protocols for different styles of breathing. However, the underlying factor is that if you change your functional day-to-day breathing, you can then do the more advanced, and actually everything, reduce stress, improved sleep, sports performance, presentation skills, you name it. it's all connected. So I decided to get certified as an advanced functional breathwork instructor because I wanted to work with athletes as well as the corporate market and individuals looking to improve their own health and well-being. And that was at the end of 2020. So here I am now. A lot of my time is spent researching, educating myself, learning from clinicians, and being referred so that I can actually work with other people to collaborate and support their clients.
Wow, what a powerful story of someone who had this random attack out of nowhere in the night, and you're like, what's going on? And you sought after answers, which, by the way, I didn't even mention. A lot of people will have a problem like that, and they'll just continue going through life, and they'll be like, well, hopefully it doesn't happen again. But it's, again, that mindset of, what was this? What caused this? How can I avoid this? And you sought after those answers. You went to the retreat, you went through it, you had your breakthroughs. And then now you're helping other people do it because you listened to what other people wanted, which your mentor was spot on. Like, they told you exactly what they wanted to see. That's absolutely incredible. Freediving. Now, I saw the pictures that you posted of freediving, and I don't think I've ever heard of freediving. So I'm ignorant when it comes to what that even is. But from the pictures, I fathom that it's little equipment, right? You're literally holding your breath and then going down and swimming in the depths. Like, what is freediving? What does that look like?
So freediving essentially is holding your breath underwater without the use of any breathing apparatus.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how long are you holding your breath for?
It will depend on your dive, and it will depend on the specific style of freediving you're doing. So to give you an example, the world record for static breath hold, where you just literally holding your breath and not moving, for women is just over 9 minutes. Wow. And for men, it's 11.5 minutes.
Didn't David Blaine hold his breath for like an obscene amount of time? Are you familiar with that at all?
Good. I believe that he did it using a pure oxygen before he held his breath, which would increase the breath hold time.
Okay.
So that is another option, and there are Guinness World Record holders who've done the same. But in my community, it's very much the original. You hold your breath. You don't take in any other oxygen. And with training and practice, we can all hold our breath longer than we think we can. So I do all my training in a pool, and then we have open water sessions. So you can compete, which I've done as well. It's the one thing I will say freediving gives you is incredible sense of presence. You just become super present. You cannot be influenced by any outside references. You are in the moment, and that is a skill we can use for life, in and out of the water. But it really is a passion. I find that I'm so relaxed when I'm in the water, and it gives me a real sense of joy, and it challenges you, because if you're stressed, you can't hold your breath very long. So channel relaxation, and that's why meditation also helps. Yoga also helps as part of the training. It's still a niche sport. It hasn't, unfortunately, been accepted into the Olympics, but that might happen in the future. But it's a very powerful, life-affirming sport, because if you're brave in water, imagine what you can do out of water.
Wow. Yeah, well put. It's like its own form of meditation, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Now, and that what you mentioned with stress is super important, because people listening, they've got family responsibilities and business responsibilities and responsibilities in general, and it can feel insurmountable, especially without this performance training. Because really what we're talking about here with breathing, this is performance training. This is how not just to perform athletically, but to perform as a corporate athlete, to perform as a family athlete, right? To perform as an athlete in your day-to-day normal life. And if you're stressed, like you said, it's going to be hard to breathe. And then that's an endless pattern of, okay, well, now you're stressed, you're having trouble breathing. And because you're having trouble breathing properly, now you're stressed more frequently. And it's this never ending pattern. So I know that you hold these awesome retreats for people. And I think you've actually got a retreat coming up in a few days. I saw it on your LinkedIn profile, which your retreats look awesome. And the testimonials you have from these retreats are absolutely incredible. They look serene. I see like the pictures you're posting of them. Like at your retreats, how do you help people to break the stress pattern? How do you help people to begin to breathe functionally once again? Because with breathing, it's something that we've been automatically doing. Like we might have a habit right now of stress breathing, of anxious breathing, right? And we've been doing it so automatically for so long that it just has become a part of who we are. How can we break that pattern and begin to make steps towards functional breathing?
Well, I will say with my retreats, the half-day retreats or full-day retreats, where you have a limited amount of time for people to become more self-aware. So we start with slowing down the breathing. And I work with them to really get a sense of how their body feels when they breathe. So, for example, if you are stressed, your breath tends to be short. You tend to breathe from the upper chest, and that's going to cause tension in the top of the body. When you are consciously able to slow your breathing down through the nose and particularly extend the exhale, that's the starting point for many people. We don't, without going into the science or anything that's too complex, just sitting quietly and getting them to focus the body and calm that breath down is a revelation for most people, because they didn't think they could breathe that way. Because actually, as human beings, we need to breathe less. We breathe too much. We overbreathe. We hyperventilate. So that raising their self-awareness and what they understand or their capability is with breath hold, for example, is very empowering for people. And particularly individuals from the corporate world who are very typically, they are used to delivering on deadline, push, push, push. Everything is, the expectation is there. You've got a goal to reach. That kind of mindset can be hugely beneficial in a short space of time to get a project finished. But if you are constantly in that fight or flight mode before you go to sleep, when you're with your family having dinner, when you're talking to your staff, that comes out, and it comes out as anger. It develops into depression and health conditions. People used to go, oh, it's a bit blasé now. Everything's caused by stress. We now know why that is. So for me, I just want to get people in the very early stages to develop self-awareness. Then we build like little building blocks. We add different techniques around different styles of breathing, so they understand how it feels to hold the breath, how the diaphragm moves, how the rib cage moves. And it's very powerful because it grounds you. I even take people out into, if there's a forested area in the one retreat that I use, and we walk barefoot and we do breath hold. And it's like a walking meditation. And so many of my clients love that, because they suddenly feel really present and they trust themselves. And when you take that and you convert it into a work environment, being able to have a difficult conversation with your staff or with your boss, but controlling your breath before, means that you are less reactive. You're going to get a better result because you're not coming across as defensive and aggressive. And this flows into skill set presentations, TED Talks. You can use these techniques in life in general. It is a toolbox for life. But I'm a big believer that, that you've got to start with self-awareness, and people have got to want to make these changes. It's no good us talking about the benefits. If you don't want to make a change or create a new habit, you never will. And I got to a point where my body just went, I can't do this anymore. And that was enough for me to make those changes. But now I also recognize when I'm starting to get stressed, I can change my breathing.
Because you trained yourself.
I've learned how to do it. And this is not something a skill many people even know is possible.
Yeah, because most people aren't aware of the power that their breath has and the way that they feel. Like, I was scrolling through my Facebook recently and I saw an advertisement for this necklace, and I've been looking for a necklace anyway, and it looked kind of cool. It's like one of those fancy stones, like, as it actually, I'm wearing it right now. It looks kind of like this. So for people watching, it's this little breathing device. Okay. And it's very small. It's like that big. And it's got like a normal chain and stuff. People don't see it. I always put it in my shirt like this. But the reason I like it is because it goes back to the self-awareness that you talked about. The brand is called Camuso. It's not sponsored, anything like that. I'll put a link so you guys can check it out. But I like it because it reminds me to breathe. And it reminds me not even just to breathe, because like you said, we're already breathing, sometimes even too much. It reminds me to be conscious of the way that I'm breathing and how I'm breathing. So whenever I feel it, because it's cold against my chest throughout the day, like it's not freezing, but it reminds me that it's there and it's big enough to feel it, I stop for a second and I've been conscious of my breathing. And I've had it for like a week now. So it's not like this hasn't like revolutionized my life yet, but it has helped me. I'm in sales. So it's helped me before I've had the enrollment conversation, or it's helped me before I've went on the live broadcast, or before I went into the training or the corporate event. It's helped me to become more censored, and it's helped me to remind myself to breathe and to be conscious of my breathing.
I love that. And there are tools available now, a lot of wearable tech that tracks. I mean, we can track pretty much anything, but in terms of breathing, if you are a particularly anxious person or suffer from panic disorder, there are these small ECG stick-on machines that you can literally apply to your body to track your heart rate. I could give you a list of wearable tech, but
What are your favorite pieces? Like, what ones do you actually like to use yourself?
I would say that the ones that I know my clients like the most, and the one that I probably like the most, is the Aura Ring.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's also the Whoop Strap. Both of these companies have done a lot of research into data tracking and health tracking. So those are highly recommended. The Leaf, Leif, that's the mini ECG. And it's all connected to apps, so you can track everything. But what I always say to my clients is, don't get obsessed by the data. It takes us away from our self-awareness. We've got to learn to trust ourselves as well and be aware that we can change something without necessarily always needing to check our data. I'm sure this will cause a few conversations, but at the end of the day, I'm all about tracking sleep data. If you're training, you want to track your heart rate variability. But living according to data, in my opinion, it can almost be a little bit too confining. There needs to be some give and take. The tech should support rather than, control how we respond to our bodies, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. The tech itself can cause stress because you see a number that you don't like and you're like, oh my God, it just reconfirms this anxiety you're feeling about whatever you're wearing the tech for in the first place.
But I think it's great that we also now have the tech to support this, because in the past we didn't have so much detail available. I do have some clients that like to send me screenshots of their sleep tracking information, which is a really good way to check on their breathing. All the techniques that we're doing, is it having a positive impact on their breathing? If it's not, why is that happening? So it's taking a much more holistic approach and looking at everything rather than just, one data metric being the reason, for example. But in terms of this deeper understanding, I'm finding now people are coming to me wanting the science. They want to understand more. What is going on? Perhaps they didn't get that from their GP or their doctor. There are options for us to educate ourselves, which is hugely empowering. But at the same time, working hand in hand with clinicians, because who's to say, there's not just one way to heal the body.
Mm.
I can testify to that.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And for those listening, we've already talked about so many things that you can do right now in order to help with stress, anxiety, to feel better, to sleep better. Like with what we just talked about in regards to the awareness of your breathing and to breathe in, correct me if I'm wrong, but breathe in slowly through your nose and then exhale through your nose slowly. And do you repeat that? Like if you had to bring us even through an exercise or two, what would a breathing exercise look like that you might lead someone through?
I can absolutely give you an example. If you are on the move, let's say you're at the office or you're in the car or you're walking, breathing in for 4 and out for 6 is a very simple one to remember. You can even do this lying down literally on a yoga mat if you wanted to. But by extending the exhale, you're shifting the body into the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system, which is your rest and digest. So when we inhale, that creates internal pressure in the body. So it almost acts as a stressor. So the exhale naturally needs to be longer to act as a relaxer. So in for 4, out for 6. I say to my clients sometimes, if you've been at your desk all day, stand up, go make a coffee or a cup of tea. The 90 seconds it takes to do that, you can do 4-6 breathing. Calm, immediately take you out of a highly stressed state. Individuals that tend to be what we say hyper aroused, their nervous systems tend to be more fight or flight more than it needs to be, would probably want to practice these breath techniques over a longer period of time, because what happens is the cortisol levels rise in the blood, and that's what lowers your attention span. It impacts your memory, your concentration, and then you get the anger and the frustration that goes alongside that. So in for 4, out for 6, just for a few minutes. If we're talking about breath hold, I say another one to remember, for example, I would call it the 5-10. You hold your breath for 5 seconds, and then you just breathe normally in and out through your nose for 10. So hold for 5, breathe normally for 10. And that particular exercise is very good for recovery after exercise. You can do it seated or lying down. I've had quite a few COVID clients who've used the 5-10 as part of their recovery process. Because remember what I said with the nitric oxide, when you hold your breath, you're stimulating more nitric oxide, opens up the blood vessels, more oxygen-rich blood to the lungs.
Wow. And this has helped people after COVID, the people you've mentioned who've had difficulties. If they use this breath hold technique, obviously, like we're not giving you guys any like what do they call it? Like health advice, right? So if you try this and like doesn't work, then obviously adjust it. But this is something that you've seen actually help clients who've had COVID. It's helped them to feel better.
These are proven techniques. They are not something that's just been pulled out of the air. These are practiced regularly. And I will say, for a lot of people who maybe are new to breath work, think of it like yoga. Yoga has so many different disciplines within it, and people are drawn to what works for them. There are lots of different breath work styles, but my advice is always to get the functional breathing good first, and then you can add the more advanced techniques, because they work really well hand in hand. But it is, the simple short breath holds can have a marked impact. And when we talk about humming, it's with the mouth closed. So you'd inhale through the nose and then you'd hum your exhale out gently, not forcefully. And by repeating this exercise, particularly before bed, this can help shift you into that parasympathetic state and also help you move into your deeper sleep cycles. Because often if your cortisol levels are too high just before bed, you're never going to shift into the REM sleep cycle. You'll be flittering around light sleep, perhaps suffering from insomnia. Broken sleep is a real problem, and you can't get back to sleep. So 5-10 breathing, humming on the exhale, and then the 4-6 as a quick win during the day.
Wow. Thanks for giving us those techniques. Like, we have so much to work with right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're listening and you're saying to yourself, well, this is great to know the techniques that I can use. Like, I can try these, I can use them, but I really want to go deeper and take this to the next level. Maybe you have a specific something with your health where, you know, based on what you've tried, that breathing will help you to feel better, and you want more confidence, you want more focus. A lot of you might be saying, well, I want to reach out to Tracey and see how she can help me one-on-one or in her retreats. And Tracey offers what she calls taster sessions. So you'll explain it much better than me, Tracey, but what does a taster session look like with you?
Well, I created taster sessions because I think a lot of people are curious about breath work. They don't really know what it is. These are 60-minute sessions on Zoom. I run them every month. So you can sign up. There's a minimal fee involved, and join a group of us where I will give you the science behind breathing. We will do some exercises together so you can see how it feels for you and your body and your mind, and some amazing tools to help you keep track of breathlessness. And at the end of that, I talk about my 6-week programs. So I find a lot of people will start there just to get an understanding of it. And then they might go off and try some of the techniques. And then if and when they are ready, they either want to join a 6-week program, and I do groups and I do one-to-one training online. And if they're local, of course, in the UK, although I'd be happy to travel to the US, I love doing face-to-face, because then you really can have a deeper experience when you are with people. But yeah, the tasters are a good starting point. It's an hour of time that could literally change your life. So I said it.
So I know that you run these monthly. For those listening live right now who are like, I want to be a part of the next one, do you have the date for the next, or maybe even the one after that?
I sure do. And awesome. I can see you now. So the next one is on the 23rd of June. That's a Thursday. It's 12 noon BST time, so that's UK time. So if you're in the US, that will be, or New York, 7 a.m. I've also done the taster sessions for groups, for companies. So if that time doesn't suit you, but you think your team would appreciate a session, then we can coordinate, and I can do that for you as well.
That's amazing. Super cool. So guys, I'm going to have several links in the comments and the description for you. One is the main link to everything that is Tracey Howes, to contact Tracey, to get enrolled in the taster session, to get some more information. So just check out the comments. You can find all the dates for future sessions there. But you've got a lot to work on right now, guys. There's a lot of information that Tracey gave you just in this 40 minutes of us talking together. So Tracey, this has been incredible. I have a lot that I'm going to personally use. I've learned a ton in this, and I have to go and rewatch it and do these techniques one by one. But I think that the big key that I got from this conversation is the awareness of how we're currently breathing, and how just making some simple shifts can change really our entire experience of life and the way that we feel. So I thank you for joining us on the broadcast today. It's been great to meet you, and I look forward to all of our future conversations.
Thank you, Brandon. It's honestly been such a pleasure, and you ask such great questions. So I'm looking forward to you again.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.
I hope you took away at least one thing from this conversation. If you knew everything that we talked about, like, maybe you're a breathing expert, because we went deep on the science of breathing, practical strategies that you can use, how Tracey got into this field in the first place, which is super interesting because you might have some health problem or health condition or random happenings that occur in your life, like the panic attack that Tracey mentioned. She had no idea why it came upon her, no idea why it happened. She decided to take matters into her own hands to find the answer, and she just happened to find it at the meditation and breathing retreat that she went to. And now she's helping other people to transform their lives by doing the same thing. So you've got a lot to work on from this. If you took away even one thing from this conversation, please share the show with just one person who also could use these strategies in their life. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.